This is Rattled and Shook. I'm Meredith, and I'm going to read you a bedtime story. This bedtime story was sent in by Sarah M. If you like House on Haunted Hill, or just haunted houses or haunted hills, then this is a good story for you. I'm the youngest of 3 daughters. Our parents, prior to retirement, were a French teacher, my mother, and a journalist/novelist, my father. Due to the nature of my father's work, we moved around a lot. Australia, Canada, the United States, and we were used to him jaunting off for months at a time to various corners of the world. When I was in the 2nd grade, however, in the 90s, my parents found a house in southern Maine that they could rent fairly cheaply and decided to move us there for the foreseeable future. I was delighted to have my childhood more established in one location, and my sisters and I relished in the huge yard and house, which was on a secluded hill. We'd been living there for a bit when my sisters and I started experiencing weird things. If we turned on the radio or CD player, the music would suddenly cut out. When we checked it, the volume would have been turned all the way down. There was a sliding door between the kitchen and dining room that recessed into the wall. Whenever it was shut, you could hear what sounded like the muffled sounds of girls excitedly talking, like a party on the other side. When you opened it, it immediately stopped. One day, I was in my bedroom and heard my sister Gwen call my name from the hallway. When I came into the hall, she was exiting the bathroom and asked me why I'd called for her. In Gwen's bedroom, there was a small door that led to the attic. My parents had warned us that if we went into the attic, to leave the door propped open because not only did it lock automatically, but it was airtight in there with the door closed. One day, when home alone, I went into the attic to get something I'd packed away. I was bent over, digging in a large moving box, when suddenly I felt hands grab my shoulders and push me headfirst into the box. As I fell in, I also heard the propped door slam shut. I immediately scrambled out of the box and saw that the door had indeed been shut. I ran to it, pounding on it, yelling, even though I knew I was home alone. When I'd exhausted myself physically and vocally, I sat down helplessly on the floor. But then the door lock clicked, and it swung open. Shortly after this, I was woken up one morning to Gwen asking me in a panicked voice to come look at something in her bedroom. When we went up, she showed me scrawled writing in green crayon on her wall that read, "Hill, Gwen. Hill, Gwen." My sister, in a panic, asked me if it said "Kill Gwen," which I was happy to report it did not. But we didn't know what to do or what it meant, and we just assumed she did something weird in her sleep. For Christmas when I was 12, being a bit of a goth, one of the presents I received was a cassette tape of true New England horror stories. Not ghost stories or cryptid legends, they were stories about unsolved mysteries or historical murders in the area. I was listening to this tape one day when it got to a story about the town we lived in, but the story was from like the 1700s. The story was that this man with 3 daughters, just like our family, wouldn't let them attend the annual dance at the end of the harvest festival. So they snuck out and went anyway. But when the girls got back to the well on the edge of their property, their father was waiting for them and killed all 3 with an axe. The cassette concluded the story by specifically saying he buried their bodies on Pine Hill. Our house was on the top of Pine Hill, and there was a paved-over well on our driveway. Hill, Gwen. I told my sisters, and we agreed to bring it up to our mom, who was much more open to these sorts of conversations than my dad. When we did, my mother immediately went, "Oh, you mean like the man in the driveway?" My mother has foot cramps she gets at night sometimes and has to walk around to work them out. She told us that almost every time she went to the kitchen window overlooking the driveway, she saw a man standing at the garage door looking up at the house. Obviously, my sisters and I freaked out. How could she not have mentioned this? But also, we knew she most likely just didn't want to upset us. Given that it was an old house, the heating was expensive and difficult to distribute. So, one year during a frigid winter, my father hung a blanket from the second floor stairs to try and trap some of the heat. One day, I was reading in the living room on a couch that had my back to the staircase, and as I sat there, I had the distinct feeling of a hand running its fingers through my hair, like in that old sleepover game where you try to give someone the chills. Crack an egg on your head, let the yolk run down, let the yolk run down, let the yolk run down. I slowly turned around to face the staircase and saw the blanket hanging, but in the gap between where it ended and the first step was visible, there was a pair of feet. They were dirty, bare, and had the hem of a white shift or nightgown hanging just above the ankles. Also dirty. It looked like someone was standing directly behind the blanket. I turned away scared, but then immediately realized I'd made the rookie mistake of taking my eyes off it. I slowly turned back around, knowing in my horror movie obsessed heart it would either be gone or closer. I turned, and it was gone. Gwen at the time had made a good friend out of a coworker of hers named Stas. She tried to get Gwen to go to a psychic with her, but Gwen wasn't interested, so Stas went by herself and got a standard reading, palm, tarot, whatever it was. Not mentioning anything about Gwen, our house, etc. But at the end of the session, Stas told us the woman took her hand, completely unprompted, and said, "Do you have a friend who believes their house is haunted?" Stas nodded, again, not giving any information, but the woman said, "Tell her not to invite what's in the driveway into the house." My sisters and I always felt weird in that driveway, but after that, it was undeniably scary to walk up the driveway to the house. In fact, several times I came home from school, I would reach for the door and it would open on its own. I swear. I would instinctually yell, "You can't come in," and run inside. My parents moved out of that house when I was a sophomore in college. They couldn't afford to buy it, the owner was gouging them, and they wanted a change. I was disappointed because it was essentially the house I grew up in, but it wasn't my choice. Years and years later, I was in that town for a birthday party, and my boyfriend at the time, who knew these stories, convinced me to go visit that house. When we got there, it was completely empty, maybe in between buyers, and as I talked to him about all the weirdness, reliving all the unexplainable things, we approached the door, and it opened.